Good evening. Reverend Casey Caseman, the Interfaith Community Liaison in the Office of Community Partnerships, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Imagining New Possibilities Through Development. It's being hosted by the Religious Land Use Working Group under the Faith Community Advisory Council in partnership with Montgomery County Planning Department. It is being taped, and it's now my honor to introduce Kirsty Schwarth, an attorney at law, member of the Faith Community Advisory Council's Executive Committee and co-chair of the Religious Land Use Working Group. He will introduce the members of the working group and describe their mission.
Thank you, Reverend Casey. Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to provide a background to the Religious Land Use Working Group, which is organizing this program on imagining new possibilities through development. The membership of the Religious Land Use Working Group was started in 2012 under the guidance of the Reverend Casey Caseman. Its members are, along with me, is my senior co-chair, Joseph Chang. The members are Michael Olaru, who you will hear from later, and Amita Jain, who's also present in the meeting. The other members are Mr. Lee Johnson, Mr. Yi Shen, and Mr. David Lambert. Each one of us brings a special experience with regard to religious land use development and so forth for faith communities. The mission of the working group is to serve as an education and advocacy resource for the land use interests of Montgomery County faith communities in dealing with county entities that are in charge of overseeing land use. With that mission in mind, the first goal that we've set is to develop and maintain a respectful and collaborative working relationship between the faith communities of Montgomery County and the county entities, and to work towards solving problems and resolving conflict. Secondly, we aim to educate Montgomery County faith communities about the laws, codes, and regulations affecting land use so that the faith communities may better understand and more effectively negotiate them in the process of land acquisition and construction and maintaining the religious use property tax exemption. Thirdly, it's our goal to inform the appropriate departments of the Montgomery County government and related entities about the special needs of faith communities in order that their staffs may be better prepared to provide them with effective service in matters relating to land acquisitions, design, construction, and religious use property tax exemption. And finally, we also advise the appropriate departments of Montgomery County government as to the impact of land use relating to laws, codes, policies, and regulations so that they do not unduly burden faith communities in the exercise of their First Amendment rights in the free exercise of religion and religious assembly, nor violate the federal statute known as the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. Thank you, Casey.
Thank you, Kirsty. It's now my pleasure to introduce Joseph Chang, the retired supervisor for Maryland National Park and Planning, and co-chair of the Religious Land Use Working Group, who will describe the purpose of this evening's forum.
Hi, I'm Joseph Chen, co-chair of the Religious Land Use Working Group. The main purpose of this forum is to connect the faith community in Montgomery County with the partners that can help them to build stronger communities and accomplish their faith mission. The forum is to inform the faith community of taking advantage of development potential on their excessive land and underutilized properties. As a result, the faith community could receive financial resources and rewards by exploring alternative use of their properties. As many faith communities face challenges of dwindling donations and the financial resources and the declining membership, particularly COVID-19 impacts, this forum offers a great opportunity to explore and reimagine their future to best serve their members and accomplish their missions. Some examples of alternative land uses may include affordable housing, senior housing, or mixed-use development. However, we encourage the faith communities to proactively participate in master plan or sector plan process, to work with park and planning in formulating detailed land use plans. It should be noted that our working group only informs and connects the faith community with partners together. We do not endorse any of the 4 developers who will make a presentation tonight or any other developers. With that, Reverend Casey will now introduce our guest speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, it's my pleasure now to introduce Robert Cronenberg, the Deputy Director of the Montgomery County Planning Department, who will provide an overview of the planning process, the status of Thrive Montgomery 2050 Master Plan, and the importance of faith communities' involvement in this process.
Thank you, Casey, and the rest of the Land Use Working Group for inviting me to speak tonight and tell you a little bit about the Planning Department now and some of our process, what we do, and the communities that we represent and kind of the participation that we would like to extend to everyone in our process. And then we're going to cover some of the opportunities and constraints, I think, to reimagining some of the new possibilities that are out there for religious facilities, not just in the downtown urban areas, but in the outskirts as well. And just providing a little different perspective on some of those possibilities, including partnerships and co-locations, some of which you will see tonight. So my name is Robert Cronenberg, and I'm the Deputy Director at Montgomery Planning Department, which is part of the Maryland National Capital Planning Commission. Park and Planning Commission. Our agency is a state agency, but we are bi-county, so we are both Montgomery County and Prince George's County when we make up the commission. The planning department in Montgomery County is made up of about 150 planners that are all subject matter experts in urban design, transportation, environment, general planning, economics, real estate, and many other things. And what we do is we really try to create great communities, and that's by working with groups like you, but also the development community, the residential, the commercial community, anyone that considers themselves part of our county. And we review applications that come to us, but we also develop long-range master plans. And those are the master or sector plans that guide a lot of the land use recommendations in the county, but also many of the recommendations that focus on infrastructure, environment, and civic spaces too. So our organization, we have a 5-member planning board that meets every Thursday, and we have recently moved from downtown Silver Spring to Wheaton. So we are residents of the middle of Wheaton right now, and we'll probably see Wheaton grow and thrive over the years to come. So our department, the functions and our planning process really are separated into a couple different groups. And what you see on the map on this slideshow is 3 geographic areas. We have the down county, the mid county, and the up county. And as you go from DC boundaries, that's more urban, to the mid county, which is a mix of urban and suburban, to the up county, which also has suburban development and the rural areas of the county. Our department has quite a few different divisions and groups that provide support, but also provide some great resources for you as a community, but also for us to be able to do our planning. We have a countywide planning and policy group that really focuses on big countywide projects like complete streets, the Purple Line, and some of our subdivision staging, which has been at the forefront with the county council over the last few months. And then also we have a research and special projects group that is really the think tank of our agency, and some of the things that they've produced lately have been the trends report. They're working on an affordable housing study and many other things that are not just housing, but they're economic related. And a lot of that information is really used to inform the plans that we work on, but also inform the residents about what the trends are within the county and how those demographics really affect and inform what we do. And we have a communications department that is awesome in terms of providing us great exposure, but also provides support for the communities in terms of how they want to interact with us too. So Casey asked me to talk a little bit about the general plan, which we are working on, and it's called Thrive 2050. And our general plan is really the guiding document that that helps us look at how development and growth is going to happen in the county over the next 30 years. It was recently put together in 1964. It was updated, I think, twice since then, and it's really it's been the guiding document that hasn't needed to be updated and has produced quite a bit of new and very progressive, but also very innovative ideas since the 1960s. Some of those have to do with transferred development rights. It created the agricultural reserve, and which we know as the Ag Reserve, and also affordable housing. We were the first in the I think in the country to implement affordable housing in our projects and in the developments that we do. And so you can see the trends in terms of the wedges and the corridors, the corridors being I-270 and 355 at the time, as well as 29, US 29 going up, going north to Baltimore. And the wedges basically were the areas in between that and areas of the Ag Reserve. So much of that development has played out today and has maintained that same concept. So the Thrive 2050 plan really looks at how we've grown, both urban, diverse, how we're interconnected. And you can see the three major outcomes which we hope to be part of this are economic health, equity, and environmental resilience. So we have been working on this for about 2 years now, and this is a document that's going to last for the next 30 years. So should be going to the council, county council in December. And just to let you know kind of how the faith communities fit into this and how they were intertwined, I guess, in some of the works that we have in the general plan. And that is really through interconnectedness, through participation, accessibility, and a lot of discussion about co-location of facilities. And then just next steps, again, we are, right now we're here, and it'll be presented to the board for the final draft this next week, and then going up for the work sessions to be presented to the council in the early part of the spring. I also wanted to provide you a little bit of a timing for our master and our sector plans, and this is just a clip that we took from the Forest Glen Montgomery Hills plan that was recently adopted, and shows you a lot of the engagement that goes into this and helps us inform and produce the recommendations that we have. And that's usually, most of our master plans are about a 2-year process. And with this one, we engaged Casey early on just to make sure that that we were engaging the right groups, because we had a lot of the faith communities as part of this master plan area. And very quickly, this is we try to make it very simple in terms of what our process is through development. It could be a three-prong type process that goes from sketch plan all the way down to subdivision and site plan. Generally, they're 90 to 120 days in terms of our process, and you can see there's a lot of analysis and review by all the agencies, both in the county and the state, that go into that. I wanted to focus a little bit on the opportunities and constraints. When Casey called me, some of the discussions that we've had in the past have been the constraints that the faith communities have had in terms of going through and navigating the process, and with the need to make sure you have the right consultants as you're going through the process, but also understanding what the master plans recommendations are, as well as the zoning ordinance requirements. And many of those have been environmental as you move up to the kind of up county areas. The lot sizes and locations definitely have an impact on the facilities that you're proposing. And then when you add in things like daycare and senior housing, sometimes those become a different step in the process that we call conditional uses. And they go through the hearing examiner for approval. In terms of opportunities and what we're talking a little bit about tonight, the zoning that we have in place accommodates religious facilities. And what we've seen recently, and I have a few examples to share with you, is some partnerships with the development community, some of which have been nonprofits for affordable housing. We've seen some senior providers, also child daycare, but multifamily developments as well. And one of the pitches is really looking at co-location of some of these facilities. And then in the downtown areas and throughout, and even with the subdivision staging that's being approved, there are incentives and impact tax credits for affordable housing, for schools. If you look at downtown Silver Spring, it's in an enterprise zone. And then you have priority funding sites, which have become a big discussion point through our process as well. And so I wanted to just finish with a few examples of what we consider co-location or mixed-use projects. This is a project that is right across from the Purple Line stop where the Silver Spring Regional Library is, and it's called Fenton Street. It was the Silver Spring Baptist Church that ended up using their property and taking up half of the property, as you can see in the middle, with the church that was rebuilt on the site, and then adjacent to it consisted of quite a bit of affordable, housing, multi-use housing, and ground floor retail. And all of our developments do have affordable housing in them, whether it's 12.5% or 15% of the total number. So this is, we do have a little bit of the demographic data here. This was a 2.5 acre site, and there were about 259 residential units. And so again, those come with affordable housing that's figured into that as well. Building was 75 feet in height, and the community had a lot of involvement in this because they were concerned about how it transitioned to the neighborhood. It turned out beautiful, and it's a very good project. Also, another project that has been around for quite some time, and I think it's changed again, but this just gives you another idea of where we've seen some co-location of facilities, especially where the religious facility wants to stay where they are, but make more use of their land and the economies that go with that. This is a project that has come in that, again, has been in the process for a while, and they've changed a number of times. But this was the Christ Lutheran Church on Old Georgetown Road that wanted to remain with their church and incorporate housing into that. And in this case had 15% MPDUs, which are moderately priced dwelling units.
Thank you, Robert. And in this last one, by the way, I was representing the county. They're able to bring in
Sure.
guarantee of rental use that would have been a big help to them.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. And we still have hope that that maybe they'll build this right here, because I think it's a beautiful project. But there was a lot that has gone into this, and I know that time is never on the side of the religious facilities, because it's that means more expense. That means more time that the facility is not in use in this case.
Well,
So
we're excited to work those issues out. So thank you very, very much, Robert.
you're
For
welcome.
not in a short period of time.
Yep.
I'm now pleased to introduce Michael Olaru, a member of the Religious Land Use Working Group and Assistant Vice President for Hogan Companies, who has overseen the process by which the companies presenting tonight were selected and will be introducing them and moderating their presentations, and after that, the all-important Q&A.
Thank you. My name again is Michael Oleru. I'm a volunteer member of the Religious Land Use Working Group. We are pleased to be joined this evening by 4 teams of developers with varied experience working with faith communities and not-for-profits to reimagine the real estate assets that they own. So over the next several minutes, you will hear from representatives from Arlington Housing Corporation, Inc., Habitat for Humanity, Bozzuto, MainStreet Partners, and Neighborhood Development Company. Each of these developers will provide an overview of their organizations and share information that will hopefully spark an idea that you will want to explore. As questions come up during the presentations, we ask that you share them in the Q&A feature. We've already got a couple of questions coming through, so we certainly encourage you to use the Q&A feature as opposed to the chat. We will be monitoring the chat, but we want to emphasize the use of the Q&A feature on your Zoom account. After we have heard from all the presenters, we will have a panel discussion with 4 developers, as well as Deputy Director Cronenberg, whom you just heard from. And they'll answer the questions that have come up during the Q&A. The developers will have their contact information in their presentation, so we ask that you take note of their contact information to address any questions that may not be appropriate to bring up in this public forum. I want to emphasize what my colleague, Joe Chang, mentioned at the beginning, which is that Montgomery County, the Faith Advisory Council, and the Religious Land Use Working Group are offering this presentation for informational purposes only, and we are not endorsing any specific speaker or developer. So with that said, we're going to kick off the presentation with Arlington Housing Corporation, Inc., in collaboration with Habitat for Humanity. And representing those organizations are Alan Goldstein, Sarah Redinger, and Haley Norris. So I'm going to stop sharing and give us a moment, and we'll get their presentation loaded up.
Well, thank you. I couldn't be more excited to be participating this evening for reasons both personal and professional. Professionally, everything that Robert just described is what AHC does and has done successfully with houses of worship and partnership throughout the region, and my colleagues will describe some of those examples. AHC has over 7,500 rental apartment units, primarily affordable throughout the region, including over 1,300 in Montgomery County. And that's where the personal comes in. I was born and raised in Montgomery County. I am out of the county at the moment in Chicago to celebrate my nephew's bar mitzvah. So particularly with a group comprised of members of houses of worship, I wanted to share the significance of that event in our family. But again, I'm thrilled to be here. I went to Kennedy High School and grew up at Or Kodesh Congregation on East-West Highway, and have subsequently in my life moved to Kensington. And my wife and I are raising our family in Kensington and are very engaged in the Bethel congregation on Old Georgetown Road in the social justice activities there. And I was thinking that many of you may be familiar with Rabbi Greg Harris, who I know is so active in many of those initiatives. So with that, again, with the pleasure of introducing myself and sharing my enthusiasm, I wanted to hand it over to my colleague, Haley Norris, who will talk about our experience as AHC partnering with houses of worship, and then to transition to Sarah Redinger with Habitat for Humanity, who is our partner on a significant, nearly 200-unit, deeply affordable, multi-bedroom affordable community that we're working on currently at the intersections of Randolph Road and Beers Mill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. As Alan said, I'm Haley Norris. I'm a Senior Development Manager with AHC Inc., and I'm excited to be here this evening to share some of these examples of faith-based partnerships that we have had to develop affordable housing. Right. With that, we have seen a strong mission alignment between faith communities and AHC. As Redeveloping their land enables these communities to put their faith in action, create a lasting legacy in their own community, and leverage the land that they own to leverage financial resources. And so this image here, and again, yeah, several years ago, this church recognized that they had an aging building and a shrinking congregation on their 3 acres of land that was developable. So the church goals for the redevelopment were, they really wanted over 100 units of affordable housing to be built on their site. They wanted to continue to own the land, and they wanted to return to the site in a new worship space that was better suited to their congregation's current needs. So we broke ground on this redevelopment in the summer of 2019. Leading up to this groundbreaking, the church went through a redevelopment visioning process. You can see here their old building. And the outcome of this visioning process was that 96% of the congregation voted yes to redeveloping their land with affordable housing. And the reverend of this church will tell you that she can't get 96% of congregants to agree on the hymns they're going to sing each Sunday. So this 96% vote was very affirming for them of this mission of affordable housing. So they issued a request for proposals and selected AHC as their development partner. So AHC and the church collaborated really closely to design the site so that it met the needs of both the affordable building and the new worship space. So we partnered to design the infrastructure, the utilities, the roads, and the parking to enable both buildings to take place on this redevelopment. AHC was able to utilize our construction team and experience to actually help the church design its building so that it met both the church's needs and its budget. We also worked hand in hand to go through the community outreach process, building community support, and ultimately getting City Council approval for the redevelopment. And so this is the spire. At closing, we entered into a long-term ground lease with the church, so they do still own the land. And this building is going to have 113 apartments that are affordable to households earning from $35,000 to $75,000 a year. And actually just around the corner from the spire down the road, we also partnered with the St. James United Methodist Church. In this instance, the church's goal was to actually sell their land and move off-site. So AHC bought the church land for $8 million, subdivided it through the zoning process, and then sold a portion of that land to a townhome developer for $6 million. You can see that right here. So what this did was this subsidized the cost of developing the affordable housing for AHC, and the ultimate result was this lovely mixed income community that you see here. So there is St. James Plaza. It's 93 affordable apartments with a preschool actually in the building that some of the residents are able to attend. AHC also partnered with the Macedonian Baptist Church in Arlington to develop 36 affordable apartments on excess church land. This one was also structured as a ground lease, so the church still owns this land. So our approach to all of these faith-based partnerships is to collaborate with these faith communities. We explored development scenarios together to determine what worked for each different faith community. And the land, because we know that that's going to differ for each congregation and each site as we are exploring these development opportunities. A little bit about AHC. We are a not-for-profit, mission-oriented developer of affordable and workforce housing. We've been active in the greater Washington, D.C. area for 45 years. As Alan shared, we have about 7,000 apartments total, close to 1,300 in Montgomery County. These include a large community in Germantown. We have a senior community in downtown Silver Spring, and we have a family community in Wheaton, where we actually partner with Interfaith Works to provide supportive services for 10 households that are transitioning out of homelessness. So that's been a great opportunity to partner with another local nonprofit there. AHC also invests close to $2 million a year in its resident services programs. These are offered at many of our communities. The programming includes after-school programs, financial literacy, and a really terrific college readiness program, which is what you're seeing right here. In the recent months, we have expanded our eviction prevention and our food assistance programs as we've seen families facing these really challenging economic times. So with that, I will hand off to Sarah Renninger.
Great, thanks, Haley. So I'm really excited to be a part of this event tonight because as a Montgomery County resident, I love the idea of more faith congregations partnering with the developers to provide much needed housing for our neighbors. So in the top left-hand corner of the slide, you'll see a home that we built earlier this year for Crystal. Crystal and her family are actually in the photo in the top right corner. They struggled for years to find housing that was both affordable and accessible, but she was able to partner with Habitat to build her own universal design home. So it's set up to be accessible and to accommodate families at all stages of life and of all abilities. And Crystal purchased her home from us in April with an affordable mortgage. But really, I just wanted to kind of ground this conversation by focusing on families like Crystal, because really that's why Habitat does what we do and why we strive to do more. But Habitat was founded in 1976 on Koinonia Farm. Koinonia Farm is actually an intentional Christian community that's committed to racial equity and economic sharing. And one of my favorite things about Habitat is that we were founded on the idea that what people need is not charity, but access to capital, and not caseworkers, but coworkers. So now we're an international ecumenical nonprofit living those ideals. We provide affordable homeownership opportunities in more than 70 countries, but we operate through local community-based nonprofits called affiliates. So we've been in Montgomery County since 1982, and in 38 years, we've completed over 600 projects and spent more than $22 million locally. Habitat is a developer, we're a builder, but we're also the lender. So we provide our borrowers with an affordable mortgage. Our organization has a long history of collaborating with faith organizations. As an example, in 2013 and 2014, we partnered with local mosques and synagogues and churches to launch the Interfaith Unity Build. And this was a really cool project that brought together 23 faith groups from across the county that raised more than $50,000 for our townhome community called Maple Hill. These congregations also put their faith into action by volunteering on Sundays in interfaith groups as well. And Maple Hill is, I think, a demonstration of what our organization is capable of building. It's a mixed income, affordable 19 townhome community in Gaithersburg. Habitat purchased the land from a private seller. We oversaw land development, served as the general contractor, and then financed all 19 mortgages. Habitat also created and funded the Homeowners Association, and we still sit on the board of directors to make sure that they're successful. So taking the best of what AHC and Habitat have to offer, we're collaborating on a really exciting upcoming project in Silver Spring that you can see a rendering of right now. AHC, Habitat, and Interfaith Works responded to and won an RFP from Montgomery County, and that's to develop 6 acres of county-owned land. But what's really neat is this is an innovative mixed income affordable development. It's going to have 168 units of affordable rental, 12 of which are permanent supportive housing supported by Interfaith Works, and then 27 affordable ownership units as well. We're focusing on providing large units, many with 3 and 4 bedrooms to accommodate larger families. Those are the folks that usually struggle to find housing that's large enough, but also still affordable. And as Alan mentioned earlier, we're also providing units at deep affordability levels. So there'll actually be rental and ownership opportunities at 30% of area median income. And all of the units will be available to those earning less than 70% of AMI. We're also excited about this project because it offers a wide variety of housing typologies. You can see some of those on the site. There's a 5-story rental building, there are garden style apartments, there's condos, and then there's universal design single family homes as well. And on top of that, we're exploring the possibility of a daycare, space for a mobile clinic, and then we're also providing a half-acre park. So this is just one example of what we can do collaboratively to meet the goals of mission-oriented local nonprofits and also of landowners to help ensure that all of our neighbors have access to safe, healthy, and affordable homes. So with that, we thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak to you all, and we look forward to questions.
Thank you very much, Sarah, Alan, and Haley. We appreciate that. Our next presenter is Bozzuto, and representing Bozzuto today are Jeff Case and Elsa Escobar, pardon me. So Jeff, I am going to spotlight you. And
okay, well, thank you, Michael. I'm Jeff Case, I'm Managing Director of Bozzuto Development Company. We were founded in 1988 by Tom Bozzuto, and we're still family owned and led by his son, Toby, who's extremely passionate about design and creating extraordinary experiences. So very excited to be here tonight. In fact, Tom's always said that our mission is to provide sanctuary for our residents. Now, that's a loaded word, especially in a religious setting here. And, you know, the religious connotations really inspired by the importance that we, and I think for the most part, all of us, place on home, which is really the core of our focus. We've got multiple divisions that make that initiative possible, including management, development, construction, and home building. But meanwhile, our approach is really described as one Bozzuto, right? I think that's one of our strengths. We work with each community through an owner-operator perspective, and we think this long-term versus merchant build outlook is a strength, particularly in public-private and especially religiously affiliated partnerships, which we'll get into in a bit more detail. So geographically, our footprint extends across much of the East Coast and out to Chicago, but we're heavily concentrated in the Mid-Atlantic, just based here in Greenbelt, and especially focused in Montgomery County with many projects that we're very proud of. While our core is residential, many of our communities are mixed use with ground level retail, especially in recent decades, and range from affordable housing to the Ritz-Carlton residences, most recently at Chevy Chase Lake, which are under construction. Nearly every deal we undertake is a partnership, and the first discussion often starts with the priorities for that type of redevelopment, such as perhaps a new church or affordable senior housing, and also expectations for land value, of course, which is an important part of the equation. Of course, land value is typically solved for is the residual costs that can be supported after accounting for the various hard or construction costs and the other soft costs associated with the development. It of course varies depending on the location, the type of community that you're redeveloping, but this is an approximation of the stack of total costs that land value can comprise on a typical development. So for this quick run through, we thought it would be most efficient to provide an overview of a few examples of public-private and also religiously affiliated partnerships, as both are typically established with a very strong mission, as opposed to a typical, you know, broker package that's simply a land sale or something to that effect. So let's go back to 2008. During the Great Recession, we broke ground on the Fitzgerald, which you see here with the University of Baltimore. This redevelopment consisted of 275 apartment residences. So those were 4 rent apartment residences and about 25,000 square feet of retail, including the university's bookstore at the time, and a large public parking garage. So this was built over a ground lease, so an annual payment to the university, the state system, which is typically more challenging to finance when compared to a typical land contribution if becoming a partner in the transaction, or a sale of the land, or a portion of the land, of course. While converting a desolate parking lot, about 4.5 acres of asphalt, to a vibrant mixed-use extension of the campus and the community, the university was able to obtain critically needed parking and also monetize, of course, this underutilized land in doing so, and creating this asset for both the community and the campus in that case. So shortly thereafter, we structured a similar deal on a much, much larger scale with the Catholic University of America across several city blocks. This was at the Brooklyn Metro Station. And in this scenario, we developed more than 500 apartment residences, a portion of which were affordable, really about 12.5% or 15%, as was referenced earlier, as a required affordable component, a very important affordable component of this larger project. So here we reoriented the streets for a more pedestrian-friendly environment and lined the sidewalks with a significant amount of retail and restaurants to activate the area and really create a catalyst for further renewal that has since really fanned out within the neighborhood. It also delivered a community dance building and approximately 30 artist studios right up against the entrance to the metro station. This partnership involved both a ground lease and also fee simple parcels, so parcels that were sold to the venture. Let's fast forward to where we recently broke ground on a partnership with the University of Maryland at College Park at the southern end of their campus. This involves Prince George's County through various development incentives that were critical, such as tax credits. It was initially intended to be a ground lease, but subsequently changed to a fee simple land contribution by the university's development entity. This was necessary to attract financing for the project, which especially these days based on costs, which have increased significantly, can be challenging. It includes nearly 400 market rate apartment residences and about 60,000 square feet of retail, which is anchored by a well-established grocer and also a gym. We've extended the road that leads to the metro. This is the Green Line, College Park Metro, and also a future Purple Line stop, which will importantly tie this into Montgomery County. And that's been done to make sure we create a great retail cafe environment. Now, right before I transfer this over to Elsa to go over a few more examples that are specifically affiliated with religious and affordable housing organizations, I'll just briefly mention Chevy Chase Lake, which Elsa is actually a developer on. So this is a large redevelopment that's currently under construction on Connecticut Avenue in Montgomery County. Our partner, the Chevy Chase Land Company here, had owned the site since, I think, well before 1900, in fact, and was committed to creating an active town square for the larger community. So this redevelopment will include a Purple Line station, effectively the podium that will tie into the Purple Line once that delivers. And the outdoor public space will be wrapped by about 100,000 square feet of retail, also anchored by a full-scale grocer in this case, nearly 600 apartments and condominiums. I mentioned the Ritz-Carlton residences, which are condos that you see on the bottom image there as one component of this development. So with that, Elsa Escobar.
Thank you, Jeff. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. Good evening. As Jeff mentioned, my name is Elsa Escobar, and I'm a development associate at the Bozzuto Group. To continue with Jeff's presentation, we are very excited to show a couple of projects that are great examples of public-private partnerships within Bozzuto and other organizations. The first one being the Views at Clarendon, also known as View Point at Clarendon in Arlington, Virginia. This project was in collaboration with the Virginia Housing Development Authority, the Views at Clarendon Corporation, the Bozzuto Group, and then Arlington County. This project, as you can see on the screen on the left side of the picture, it's an 8-story building built on top of 2 stories, which are currently occupied by the Church of Clarendon in the city's largest daycare. The church, who are the owners of the land, their initial proposal was to rebuild their existing structure. There's the church and their office in a much smaller space, and also deliver a place for the daycare. They also asked the developers to preserve the steeple, which was very emblematic for the city of Clarendon. With that, the team successfully developed around 116 apartment units. Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff.
Okay.
Thank you. The team successfully developed 116 apartment units, 46 are market rate and 70 are affordable. Finally, this project was very successful and had a very positive response from the community, so that the project was fully stabilized only 5 months after opening in 2011. With that, continuing, we have Union and Queen in Roslyn, Virginia. This project is a 12-story, 193 apartment units. 40% of the project is affordable and the other 60% is market rate. The project had an existing 12-unit building that the tenants were successfully found a temporary home while the building was built. So once the building was delivered in 2016, those residents were able to move into the building and enjoy the Class A amenities, as we can see on the screen. Wonderful views of Roslyn in Washington, D.C. with a great rooftop. Class A amenities such as a fitness center, clubhouse, and lobby, mailroom, and etc. This project was in partnership with Weasley Development, Bozzuto Group, and Arlington County. And finally, we had the Westminster Church redevelopment. This project is currently under pre-development stages. Bozzuto is looking for PUD approval. This project the proposal includes to deliver around 84 condominiums in around 120 apartment homes. This project is located in Southwest DC in the heart of Southwest and 400 I Street. The partners of this project are going to be the Bozzuto Group, such as the condo developer, Dantas Partners as the apartment affordable developer in the District of Columbia. With that, we want to close out on a presentation on behalf of the Bozzuto Group. Jeff and myself want to thank you for the time. Our contact information is on the screen, and feel free to email or call us with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff and Elsa. We appreciate that presentation. Next is we have the team from MainStreet Partners, Jeff Cazzaro and Mona Malik. Yep.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to join your presentation and be given a chance to show you who we are, what we have done in the past, and what we can do in the future. My name is Mona Malik, and I am the Marketing Director for MainStreet Partners. Co-hosting with me is my boss and mentor, Jeff Cazzaro. I'm going to start off by saying that MainStreet Partners is not quite as big as the other developers that we have on here. But one of the biggest traits about us is our heart. I feel that when working with faith-based communities, that is so important. And when you call us, you will actually talk to a principal and not just an analyst. One of the biggest things that's going on right now is COVID, and faith-based communities are suffering. So this is very important that we get involved with, with the development part and be able to help each other. So we view every project as a dream that we're lucky we get to build. And our clients are never just a project to us. They are an opportunity to create a vision together. Again, when you call us, you will talk to a principal of the company, myself, Jeff, we have Sergio, Sean, and Steve Baldwin. So it's not just an analyst. You'll talk to a person that directly works with you. And again, our primary mission is to help faith-based communities, especially during these difficult times we are in. I see that the communities have suffered and had a great lack of services and membership, and we want to help. We see all the hard work that you're doing to remain virtual so that people can still connect socially and spiritually. And we see you playing a critical role in caring for, the vulnerable and people of need in the community. So how we can help, what we will do is we will conduct a feasibility study on each property with the development potential and prepare a feasibility study for the property, both at no expense to the faith community. And then meeting the challenges. Basically, we want to utilize the real estate land working groups, faith communities, real estate assets to generate the funds necessary to enable them to fulfill their dreams and provide financial long-term security for current and future mission needs. So MainStreet Partners and its role. We are a team of professionals committed both professionally and spiritually to facilitate Montgomery County, Maryland faith community real estate assets. We have a dynamic track record of success in working with faith communities, educational institutions, and other nonprofit organizations. And we desire to create a working real estate partnership with the faith community, one in which you will not be asked to assume any financial risk or burden. Now I'll pass it off to Jeff Cazzaro, who can explain to you what our plan is to help you.
Hi, thank you for having us. The first thing I want to point out that on slide 2, that's a much better representation of me than me personally. So we had an actor standing there for the CEO. So if you do meet me in person, don't be disappointed. Rather than going through who Main Street is, I thought I'd start out with talking about how we normally would look at a faith-based community project. And as Mona said, we would analyze each and every project on an individual basis. And these will be done by one of our principals. And basically what we would look at, and obviously every single project has a separate path, but basically we'd look at you know, would we subdivide would we take the church or the facility or whatever there is, would we take it and would we subdivide it off because the problem is there a problem because there's a mortgage, is there maintenance, what is the problem? And how do we solve it with the best financial opportunity, utilizing the church's most valuable asset, which is their real estate? And that would be one of the things we could do, is subdivide a piece of property off, as I think one of the other two developers said, and essentially develop it. And then that money would either come back to the community as either an outright sale, would come back as a joint venture, or it can come back as they would own it and we would you know, manage it and you know, and create a value to it. We as a company want to keep everything in-house. And one of the things that is important when you develop a piece of property is the financial and fiscal opportunity. And by that, we bring the financing to the table for each project. We have in-house architects and engineers, and also we have our own construction company. Now, we feel that the projects that we would be looking at in Montgomery County would probably be on a modest size of probably $20 million or under. And that would mean that we would build them ourselves. And that way we can control not just design, the temper of the property, but also the cost, which is the most important thing, because ultimately the cost of the facility and what it's either sold or maintained or utilized for is the most important part here. So, by the way, I'm doing this extemporaneously. I have a set of glasses that are actually not mine, they're my wife's. Not my wives. I don't have wives. I only have one wife. Casey, you hear that? Only one wife. So I'm trying to read with glasses that are not necessarily mine. Sorry about that. I can tell I'm prepared. So again, this slide basically says that we're going to do everything in-house, but with our own people, and that is true. And we have been. I personally have been working in Montgomery. I wasn't born here like some of the other people said, but I've been here for 40 years. And by the way, I just realized it's 40 years. I kept saying 30 years. I now realize I'm 10 years older than, you know, than I want to represent. So I've done literally hundreds, if not, you know, close to 1,000 projects in the city, in the county, anywhere from, you know, from a one-house subdivision to, you know, bigger projects all throughout the county. Our firm, although we're not a household name like some of the other big firms, we do have major projects such as we just completed the plaza down in Miami. We have a project currently up in Pennsylvania that's a $1.4 billion 2,000 unit project. But that's what one part of our company does. And we do that either through you know, owning the properties ourselves and again designing and not necessarily constructing, you know, projects over 20 million, but that's a big part of our company. But we also have a functional company or a working company, which is the architects, the engineers, and that's where we do projects that are 20 million under, and that's where we would work with the faith-based communities here to again determine what the ultimate use of the property is, what the you know, how to finance it, and as importantly, how to make it part of the community so it's not an anomaly that the community, you know, will find that it's, you know, that won't work. Every single project we would do as a separate LLC. For instance, the one that's on the screen now, the Miami World Center. We're not, you know, you're not going to see our name on that other than in the in the ownership documents. So every project we would do with a faith-based organization, we would set up a separate LLC, and that really would be tailored for the needs of that particular community. Meaning, is it better to do a you know, 501c3 exchange on one part of the property to another? What's the best tax ramifications? And essentially, what's the best financial methodology after it's constructed to to meet the needs of the church itself or the facility itself. In addition, we have worked with the Children's Guild, Kids First, a number of Solomon's Foundation, a number of organizations that either lend money to communities or that really take a deep interest in a community and help establish and/or expand church facilities. And as a member of the boards of these organizations, I kind of sit back and I see what the needs are and notice that a lot of the communities themselves are very, sometimes they're kind of rudderless and they don't understand how to get from one point to another and save their churches or their facilities. And I think we can help provide that guidance too, in a gentle way, to whatever community wants to avail themselves of our expertise. And again, I want to point out what Mona said is if you decide to want to work with us, anything that we do is at no cost to you, to the point of bringing a feasibility study in and determine how we can move forward together. And on the last several slides, I just want to introduce some of the people on the team. Mona, if you can just go to the. By the way, can everyone see that this is extemporaneous and I'm not following the things? So this is me. That's Mona. This is Sergio Katz is our CFO. Was one of the top M&A people in the country with Tyco. Sean Weingast brings a lot of financial professionalism to the team. Steve Baldwin is the president of the National Children's Guild, and then Gary Kellner has made his living for the last 50 years. He says 40, but I know it's 50. Representing faith-based organizations and making sure that they get not only the bank financing, but as importantly, they can get state money, federal money, and whatever else is out there. So anyway, that's the end of our my extemporaneous presentation here, and we just I'm anxious for questions.
Thank you very much, Jeff and Mona. We appreciate that presentation. Our last presentation this evening is going to come from Neighborhood Development Company and Clint Jackson. So
Well, good evening. I'm here from the Neighborhood Development Company. It's a pleasure to be here with all of the esteemed panelists in the Religious Land Use Working Group. As Michael pointed out, I am Clint Jackson, and I am the Director of Acquisitions and Development for the Neighborhood Development Company. Just want to touch on three things today. Want to introduce NDC, or the Neighborhood Development Company, who we are. Also describe what we do, and then offer, I think we have 5 different tools that faith-based organizations could utilize to develop their real estate. So we'll just go through those particular tools and some examples of how those tools have been executed. Neighborhood Development Company was founded over 21 years ago by Adrian Washington. He is the founder and principal and CEO of NDC. He's a native Washingtonian. NDC is based in Washington, D.C. However, we do have some active projects in Montgomery County, as well as in Prince George's County, Maryland. Adrian's provided leadership and stewardship over NDC over the last 21 years and is still a very important part of NDC's management and leadership. Next, a little bit more about NDC. As I mentioned, we have a 21-year track record. We've delivered over 1 million square feet of development, We're also a vertically integrated company. Even though we're a smaller development company, we're vertically integrated. Our key components include development management, project finance, construction management, and investment management. On the investment management side, we raise equity capital, we arrange debt financing, and we also manage assets in our portfolio, real estate assets in our portfolio. Also, we really define NDC as a community developer. We specialize in developing in emerging neighborhoods, primarily in the District of Columbia. And we also, a fair percentage of our projects are affordable and workforce housing, including neighborhood retail. Lastly, we have a robust pipeline of 500,000 square feet of development between residential and retail uses. So now what we do, as I mentioned, we build primarily multifamily residential projects, including affordable housing, market rate housing, condos, as well as apartments. And here are just a few examples of some of our larger projects. And several of these, including actually 4 of these, some are under development and some are already complete, but they are joint venture projects. And just wanted to highlight, our joint venture model as a way that we could approach working with members of the Religious Land Use Working Group. The other point I want to emphasize here about these particular projects, these are much larger projects. As you can see in terms of the unit counts, on the high end, 685 units. And on the low end, we have 72 and 69 units, but we can approach projects of all different sizes and scale. Next, these are some of our smaller projects, and I wanted to showcase that to just once again emphasize the range of projects that NDC can get involved in. These are smaller, and most of these are affordable housing projects in the District of Columbia. So lastly, just wanted to share just some ideas in terms of what are some tools that faith-based organizations could utilize to develop their real estate. Of course, this isn't an exhaustive list, but these are some of the tools that we've experienced, and maybe some of the members here could use them as well. So the churches that we've done partnerships with or joint ventures with, they decided to form a nonprofit community development corporation to kind of separate the real estate activity from the church entity itself. Some of our projects include a ground lease, where there's a ground lease between the church and the developer or the development entity. Another tool is forming a partnership with the developer, where the church may be contributing the land as equity within that partnership. We've also seen public-private partnerships where the local municipality, the church, and the developer are all together making a project or a deal work. And lastly, another tool is affordable housing. And through a not-for-profit CDC, there are a number of financial benefits, including tax exemption, at least in the District of Columbia, property tax exemption for the project, as well as access to other capital as a result of pursuing affordable housing and utilizing a not-for-profit community development corporation. And lastly, here are just 2 examples that projects I've directly been involved in my experience. And first is the Wesley House. Wesley House is located in Northeast Washington, D.C. This was a partnership between a developer, a church CDC, and the District of Columbia. Wesley House includes 119 units of senior affordable housing. And in this case, the CDC's goal was to make a positive impact on the community and ground lease land that the District of Columbia government already owned. So this is a slightly different example than many that we've discussed earlier today, where this is a church or a faith-based organization through its CDC acquiring land that it doesn't currently control so that it can have an impact through affordable housing. The second example is called the Strand Residences and Restaurant. This is also based in Northeast Washington, D.C. And this is a partnership between the developer and the House of Praise CDC. The development program includes 86 units of affordable housing and a 7,000 square foot restaurant. Actually, what's also different about this project is the District of Columbia owned the property, the small property here, which was a historic theater, and the District of Columbia solicited proposals through an RFP, and the CDC and the developer responded together to acquire the historic property, and then separately the developer acquired or assembled adjacent parcels to build the residences around it. So it's sort of a two-component project. It's a public-private partnership, and it also includes public financing as well as new markets tax credits and historic tax credits. Because once again, the theater down below is a historic resource. That concludes my presentation for tonight. I'll be here for any questions, and you may have seen my contact information up above, and I can provide that as well if necessary. Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and look forward to the Q&A.
Thank you, Clint. We appreciate that. If you could stop sharing, and we're gonna just move into the panel discussion.
Sure.
While that's happening, we're very grateful for the participation of all of this evening's presenters, and you will hear more from them, as Clint just mentioned. So as we prepare to transition to the panel, I'd like to acknowledge the partners that help the Religious Land Use Working Group fulfill its mission. The working group is effective because of partnerships with the Montgomery County Planning Department, Department of Permitting Services, Department of Environmental Protection, the Office of Community Use of Public Facilities, and Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission. So this evening's panel is going to be moderated by my colleague, Amita Jain. And let me make sure we've got, I think I've still got Robert Clint on here, so bear with me. Mm-hmm. And we'll transition to, good. All right, Amita, I'm sorry, before we start the Q&A, I just wanna emphasize the use of the Q&A feature. Robert, you've been knocking it out the park. You've answered the questions that came in. So we certainly got the right person on this panel, but we've got some other questions that we would like to get your input from, Robert, as well as the other developers that we have on this panel. Hopefully you took note of the developers' contact information in their presentation. We encourage you to reach out to them directly with questions that may not be appropriate for this forum. So with that said, Amita, I'm gonna hand it over to you, and you can kick off the panel. I hope everyone's able to see everybody. And not just, yes, okay, I see a head nod from Alan, thank you. So go ahead, Amita.
Okay, great. Well, some wonderful presentations and a lot of effort apparently went in, and we thank you. And we also want to thank all of those who joined us this evening and hope it was fruitful for you. So let's get into a few of the questions that we have here. One of them, what should faith-based organizations be mindful of when considering redevelopment? So Robert, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Thanks, Mita. So I think I had responded a little bit to that question, and that is really understanding what your site more about your site, what your site can do, what your goals are, and understanding what processes you need to go through. Because in our experience, the faith-based community isn't as aware of some of the zoning ordinance requirements and some of the other master plan recommendations that are out there. And the more they know going into a process, I think is extremely helpful. And that doesn't mean that you can't meet with the different county and state agencies to become better educated. But working hand in hand with your development partner, I think, is key. And hiring the right consultant, I think I put in there a couple times, is another thing that's really critical to make sure that everyone is going through the process and understanding what they're what's required of them to create a great project.
Great. Anybody else want to add to that?
I can never miss an opportunity to speak to a group. So this is Alan Goldstein. I would chime in that Haley mentioned in her remarks that we had 96% support from one of our church partners to go ahead with a redevelopment. We've also had the opposite experience, which is a faith congregation initiating the process, but not having internal cohesion around the goals. And thus you get a step or two down the process to find that you have internal dissent, and you end up sort of never really making the forward progress that you want. So there is a certain amount of work incumbent on the congregation to understand what its vision is, which you can develop either independently and then engage a partner, or you can work with consultants. Enterprise has a faith-based initiative that I would encourage people to reach out if you're just starting this process.
Great. Okay, the next question we have that's come up here is, what long-term shifts, if any, do you anticipate from COVID? For example, changes in density, community amenities, transportation, etc.
Am I interrupting anybody? This is
Nope,
Jeff.
go right ahead.
I can give it a shot. Okay, cool. I guess just open forum. You know, we at Bozzuto have put a lot of thought into COVID. The first thing I would say is ensuring that you promote what makes for the best possible adaptability, functionality, wellness, and you know, that you don't sort of, I'll use a religious acronym here, but build the church for Easter Sunday, specifically as it relates to COVID, right? We as a human society have survived pandemics before. We will survive this one. It's been you know, a challenging one without question, and there are implications that we all need to address in our development. But I would say don't overreact from a trend standpoint. Concurrently, some of the very important trends that we have seen that should be integrated or continue to be integrated into developments are things like very large balconies, a great flow between interior and exterior spaces, full building wireless, for instance, in the case of multifamily buildings, so you can do virtual tours and things of that nature. You know, very straightforward, simple measures that provide for that adaptability that was referenced. And finally, again, in the case of multifamily, to the extent that you can really have some extraordinary public spaces, which may sound somewhat counterintuitive, but public spaces that, again, really flow between those interior and exterior experiences, it creates that great sort of community space that we all really covet still, even within this pandemic experience, when properly utilized, designed, and maintained. So thank you.
Great. Okay. The few minutes that we have left, I want to get to the next one here. How important is it to access demographics to take into account where the neighborhood will be in 5 to 10 years?
Well, I can, let me just speak real quick from the planning side, because we do quite a bit of reporting, both demographics, trends, economics, and it's information that's available to the public, and it involves public when we do the process. And we use that in all of our master plans. So I would encourage anyone that is looking at their properties and how they might want to redevelop those or re-envision those their properties, to really look at a lot of the reports that we do have in our planning toolbox, and because they're really useful tools. And so I would stop there and just say we have quite a bit on our website that's available to everyone, and it's intended to be used and overused for demographics and trends.
And how do they access the demographics there?
How does someone obtain those? They're in our reports. So you can go to our website, and you can go to we're set up by communities in our website. So up county, down county, mid county. But if you go to research and special projects, they're the ones who usually put out a lot of our studies that we have. Or you can contact me.
Great. There's a couple of questions in the Q&A box here. Let me get to those. If the faith-based organization's property is surrounded by an affluent neighborhood, and getting it rezoned would be required, could you offer some advice?
That's a great question, because rezoning is one of the most difficult. Did you say you said rezoning, right?
Yep.
Yeah, rezoning is one of the most difficult things to deal with, particularly with having to prove either a change in a neighborhood or a miszoning to begin with. I think the best thing is to evaluate what the alternatives are within the current zone, and try to make those work versus try to rezone something, because that's very expensive and it takes a long time. And I've worked in a lot of different jurisdictions. And although I find that the staff at Park and Planning is great, you still have a lot of subjectivity in order to get a rezoning. So if depending on the use, I would try to stay away from a rezoning versus a Euclidean zone.
Oh, one thing I would add is the church or the faith-based organization would really have to commit to reaching out to that surrounding community and, sharing its vision and making its case for, changing the zoning or to include a new use that may be different than what's in the existing community. So I think that's really the first step, reaching out to those residents, those neighbors, and trying to reach an understanding there first.
Great point.
Okay, I think we have time for one more before we wrap up for the evening. So any of you, maybe developers that haven't had a chance to speak on a question yet, chime in. The question is, most of the projects you have shown appear to have been undertaken by faith-based organizations that have achieved some degree of consensus regarding redevelopment of some or all of their land. Have you had experience with groups that are still trying to figure out and continue to relate deeply to their building or campus as they have known it? Any advice?
The answer is, go ahead, Clint.
Oh no,
Then don't move.
I was just taking the question in. That's a good one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's the basis of what we're talking about. I think Alan referred to, a lot of the communities that we deal with don't always have consensus within their own community, and that's the first thing. They have to have a consensus, and that consensus, I would think, it comes from a developer that would say to them, "This is what we think the best methodology and the best way forward is." And we have experience on a church, actually on St. Barnabas in DC, where they had a mortgage that they couldn't meet on a monthly basis. Plus, although they didn't have a diminishing congregation, they actually had an increasing congregation. Their maintenance costs went up. So we took their property, and when I say we did an age-restricted unit, a bunch of units on their property, solve their mortgage problem, and we solved it right away by separating the subdividing the land away from the church land. And so the point is, there has to be consensus before moving forward. Otherwise, everyone's going to flail and it's going to fail. And again, the dissension, there can't be dissension within the ranks of the team that's trying to move forward in any way, shape, or form. So.
Thank you.
One last thing I'll add, and I agree with Jeff's response 100%. One approach that we've used that was successful is using design as a way to build consensus. And what we found that was effective is when the congregation was able to see different vision options, it was a little bit easier for them to kind of get their minds and hearts around, what would be the best path forward. So I would submit that design can be a tool used to try to build consensus.
Pictures are always better than 1,000 words, right?
That's right. Yeah.
I thank all of our presenters. You have come very well prepared, and the experience and resources you bring us tonight would be of great help to faith communities who are at the point of needing to reimagine their future. And you're going to, I think, help them to do that in terms beyond what they have conceived in the past. So I thank you for that. I thank everyone who's been online, for all those participating, offering the questions. For special thanks for Michael Elleroux for moderating the forum, and Molly Calloway, Director of the Montgomery County Volunteer Services, Yasmin Elazar, our Program Manager, and Tamita Jane for your technical assistance in coordinating this evening's event. We'll be looking again at your questions and comments, and are available to work with you for further information on our mission and potential partnerships with you. Check out our website, montgomerycountyinterfaithmd.org, as you see on the slide, or you can contact me, mansfield.caseman@montgomerycountymd.gov.